Well, yesterday we went quizzing. All of these went quizzing. Y'all want to tell them how you did? Well, let's see. I don't even remember. I know we had 1 bronze, 2 bronze, 2 bronze, 1 silver, and 1 gold all-star. They did a good job. And they're going to go do it again here in next month sometime. February 10th, we're going to go do it again. Yep. And I'm not for sure where they're going this time, but anyway. Where? Oh, Batesville. We're going to go a long way to quiz next time. That's not that far, but anyway. Good job, guys. Appreciate y'all. Keep learning. We'll be reading from Ecclesiastes this morning. Ecclesiastes chapter 3. Beginning with verse 1. For everything there is a season, a time for every activity under heaven, a time to be born and a time to die, a time to plant and a time to harvest, a time to kill and a time to heal, a time to tear down and a time to build up, a time to cry and a time to laugh, a time to grieve and a time to dance, a time to scatter stones and a time to gather stones, a time to embrace and a time to turn away, a time to search and a time to quit searching, a time to keep and a time to throw away, a time to tear and a time to mend, a time to be quiet and a time to spend, a time to love and a time to hate, a time for war and a time for peace. You know, if there's something we all have, it's time. We don't know how much of it we have, but we have time. That's why our stewardship is important. You know, stewardship is about what we do with what we have. How do we use what God has blessed us with? How are we faithful with God's blessings? And today we're going to begin a 4-week series about stewardship. Our time, our testimony, our talent, and then our treasures. And so today we're going to be looking at the stewardship of our time. You know, the author of Ecclesiastes reminds us that there is a time for just about everything. And as we would look at that list, most of us have experienced all of that list in one form or another. Planting, harvesting, tearing down, building up, crying, laughing, grieving, dancing, keeping, giving away, born, and die. You know, we personally haven't experienced that die part yet, unless we've experienced a resurrection of some kind after we did. But we've all experienced death in some form. We have experienced all of these things, and we know there is a time for them all. And what we really discover, I think, as we would look at this list is how we use our time matters. You see, God has blessed us with time. I came across this: if a person lives to 74 years of age, that means you've lived approximately 888 months, 27,010 days, 648,240 hours, 38,394,400 minutes, and 2,022,508,800 heartbeats. Now then, here's the point. You are a steward of every month, every day, every hour, every minute, every heartbeat. you are a steward. What are you doing? How are you living? Are you being a wise steward of the time you have? We find in Isaiah chapter 49 and verse 4, the author says, "But my works seem so useless. I have spent my strength for nothing and to no purpose, yet I leave it all in the Lord's hand. I will trust God for my reward." You know, this is a voice of a messenger who was called by God before he was born. And his purpose was to deliver words of judgment, to bring people back to God, and to glorify God. And what we read in verse 4, it seems he doesn't feel like he's been very successful. That factually he feels useless. And he wonders if he is using his time wisely. But then he acknowledges that it's all in God's hands and he will continue to be faithful to his mission. Have you ever felt that way? Have you ever felt like you were just spinning your wheels and you were wasting your time? Nothing was going right. Nothing was being fulfilled. You were just going on. You know, I would dare say probably all of us at one time or another have felt that way. But the question is, are you going to give up? Or will you continue to be faithfully use your time for God's purpose? You see, God has given us time with a mission and a purpose. And we are to be faithful stewards of that time. But what is time? If we're going to be stewards of time, what is time? How would you define time? Just think about that for a minute. How would you define time? Actually, time is probably nothing more than it's how we mark events. In fact, if you were to look time up in Webster's dictionary, the one I looked at, he gives about a whole page to define time. And that ought to tell you it's kind of hard to difficult to define. But one of the definitions in there, and one of the first ones in the definition, is simply this: indefinite, unlimited duration in which things are considered as happening in the past, the present, and the future, every moment there has been or ever will be. Time. William Penn said, "Time is whatever we want most, but what we use worst." Well, think about that one for a moment. We all want more time, but how are we making use of the time we have? So time is merely the order of events. It's not an entity in itself. We mark the events in our life by hours, days, months, and years. The psalmist said, "For you 1,000 years are as a passing day, as brief as a few night hours." And Peter repeated this when he said, "A day is like 1,000 years to you, Lord, and 1,000 years is like a day." You know, however you want to define time, you can define it any way you want to. But the truth is, time is a gift from God. He has gifted us with time. Ecclesiastes 7:14, it says, "Enjoy prosperity while you can, but when hard times strike, realize that both come from God. Remember that nothing is certain in this life." Good or bad, whatever it is we may be experiencing in life, we are alive by the grace of God. God formed us. God made us. God breathed the breath of life into us. God sustains us, giving us life. Every day is a gift from God. Rudyard Kipling, in a poem, God's Minute, he writes, "I have only just a minute, only 60 seconds in it. Didn't seek it, I didn't choose it, but it's up to me to use it. I must suffer if I lose it, give an account if I abuse it. It's just a tiny little minute, but eternity is in it." You know, Jesus taught several parables, teaching us about stewardship. And one of the things one of the important points of every one of those parables is simply this: we will give an account to God for how we have used God's gifts, and that includes the gift of time. I think we would have to acknowledge that time is valuable. Oh, we can't put dollars and cents value upon it, but it is valuable. It is valuable because, as the poem reminds us, and as a Maltese proverb reminds us, time is an education for eternity. What we do today has an impact on eternity. How we use our time today is an investment. You know, in finances, the sooner we start investing, the greater our investment grows. Well, we can't grow more time and we can't make more time, but the sooner we begin using our time wisely, the sooner we begin investing in good for eternity. We have to live but one day at a time, but we are living for eternity in that one day. Ralph Waldo Emerson says, a day is a miniature eternity. You know what all this reminds us is simply this: how I use my time today impacts eternity. Somehow it is impacting it. See, God has given us this valuable gift of time, and we determine how we're going to use it. Stephen Covey says the clock represents our commitments, our appointments, our schedules, our goals, our activities, but what we do with and how we manage our time. So we really probably need to pray with the psalmist in Psalms 20:12 when he says, teach us to realize the brevity of life so that we may grow in wisdom. You know, help us to use our time wisely. You know, there's a lot of things we can't do with time. You can't save time. Oh, we talk about saving time a lot and things we do, but the truth is we can't save time. We can't put it back for a rainy day. What we have is what we've got. There's no saving it. Not only can we not save it, we can't buy it. It doesn't matter whether we're rich or poor. It doesn't matter if we have billions of dollars or whether our bank account's in the red. You can't buy more time. You can't borrow it either. I can't come to you and go, hey, can I borrow some time? Even if I could, how would I pay it back? I can't steal it. I can't manufacture it. I can't. It's a gift from the maker of time. It's a gift from God. And I can't modify time. There's no such thing as time travel. I don't care what Marty McFly in Back to the Future has to say to us. We're not going back in the future and we're not going forward in the future. We're right here where we are. We cannot modify or manipulate the gift of time. The time we have is the time we've got. So we got to make the most of it right now. So therefore we need to be wise stewards of time. Waldo Emerson says, write it on your heart that every day is the best day in the year. You can go, now wait a minute, I've had some pretty good days. Man, I think back over last year, 2023, I had some pretty good days last year. How is today the best day of the year? Because you're alive. That's how it's the best day. And today you can choose to make better use of your valuable time. Today you can choose to better honor God, fulfilling His purpose for your life, and invest in eternity. Yes, today is the best day of the year. So follow the instructions of Paul in Ephesians chapter 5 when he says, so be careful how you live. Don't live like fools, but like those who are wise. Make the most of every opportunity in these evil days. You know, how do you use your time? Have you ever stopped to think about that, really? How do you use your time? Well, somewhere around 1998, somebody figured all this out. How they did it, I don't know, but they figured this out, and they said if you live to 70 years of age, here is the average of how you have used your time. 20 years sleeping, 20 years working, 6 years eating, 7 years playing, 5 years dressing, 1 year on the phone, I think that's a little short for today, 2.5 years in bed, 3 years waiting for someone, 6 months tying shoes, 2.5 years for other things, including 1.5 years in church. Wow, you ever thought about that? If I live to age 70, I will have only spent 1.5 years in church. Well, I thought that was kind of interesting, so I kept looking, and I said, certainly there's got to be something closer to where we are today. And I came across this one from 2017 in the Huffington Post. It goes to the age of 80, but sort of listen to how things have changed. On average, living to age 80, you will spend 26 years sleeping. That's already 6 more than 10 years ago. And 7 years trying to get to sleep. So that means you're spending 33 years in bed. 33 years in bed, living to age 80. That's a third of your life. 13 years working. That's 7 years less than 10 years ago. 11 years looking at a screen. That's about 8 years watching TV and 3 on your phone. 1 year on romance, 4.5 years eating, almost 1.5 exercising, 1 year socializing, 334 days in school, and that leaves about 8 years for everything else, including if you just go to church 2 hours a week, every week, until you're 80 years of age, you would have spent less than 1 year in church. If you went 4 hours a week, every week, till you're 80, you would be at about 1.5 years in church. If you only go 1 hour a week, you're at about 0.6 hours or less. You know, I don't know what you gather from all that, but here's what I gather from it. When we say church is bogging us down and we're tired and we're weary from church, we need to re-examine how we're using our time, because we haven't spent very much time at church. Less than a year if I live to 80. Well, since how we use our time will impact eternity, we need to ask ourselves daily, what is the best use of my time? You know, in sports, you can take a timeout, and you can plan a play, or you can just take a breather, or you can just stop the clock. You know, that's one thing that amazes me about sports. There can be 4 minutes on the clock, and it can take you 30 minutes to play it. But you know, in life, there's no timeouts. You can't stop the clock to solve a problem. You can't stop the clock to make a plan. You can't stop the clock to have a breather. And as we've already seen, you can't save it. You can't store it. You can't stretch it. All we can do is use it or abuse it. But the clock keeps ticking. We need to often examine how we use our time. All of us. You know, we need a plan to spend the time we have wisely. If we would really begin to look at some of the things we do, what we would discover is there's some that can't wait, there's some that should wait, and there's other things that we do that they must wait. We could just let them go and nothing would really matter, especially in the light of eternity. We must look at how we use our time, and are we bringing glory to God with what we do? Are we storing up treasures for eternity in the use of our time? We need a plan. Whether it's written or whether it's just in our mind of how we are being stewards of our time, we need a plan of some kind, and then we need to work the plan. In other words, be a wise steward of how we use our time. The thing is, if we fail to plan, we'll probably just find that we're killing time. You ever said that? Oh, I'm just killing time. You know what you're doing when you're killing time? You're wasting valuable time. We've all heard it. We've probably all said it. Time flies when you're having fun. You know what I'm finding is time flies. Each year seems to pass quicker than the one before it. Time flies. Guess who's the navigator? We are. Time flies and we are the navigator. We are the stewards of our time. Carl Sandburg, he said, time is the coin of your life. It is the only coin you have, and only you can determine how it will be spent. And he went on to say a little bit later, and if you don't, somebody else will spend it for you. We're going to use our time somehow. Either we are going to be the stewards of how we use our time, or we're going to let somebody else determine how we use our time. We need to be wise stewards of our time. May God help us to know what to do with our time, that in every time will be a very good time, for we will be a wise steward. You know, part of using our time is we must focus on doing the right things first. Peter Drucker said more people are interested in doing things right than in doing the right thing. So I would suggest to us, let's be interested in doing the right thing right the first time. Because if you don't get it right the first time, when are you ever going to have time to really do it over? Let's be good stewards, wise stewards of our time, and use it wisely. You know, after all, you can't make footprints in the sand if you're sitting down. In other words, if you don't use your time wisely, then you're using it foolishly. And how you use your time, remember, impacts eternity. Well, if I'm not mistaken, tomorrow's Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Here's a quote from him. The time is always right to do what is right. We need to make wise use of our time. We need to fulfill God's purpose for our life. We need to glorify Him with our time. We need to remember what we're doing with this moment right now, as well as every moment of every day. We're investing in eternity. Every minute has an eternity in it. How are we using our time? I'd like to close this morning with a prayer using the scriptures we've used this morning. God, help us to be careful how we live. May we not live like fools. Lord, may we live like those who are wise. Help us, Lord, to make the most of every opportunity in these evil days in which we live. Lord, teach us to number our days, that we may gain a heart of wisdom, that we may be good stewards of the time you have gifted to us. May our stewardship impact the next generation to be wise stewards in the use of their time, and may it impact eternity. We ask these things in your holy name. Amen. Often we don't give much thought to time, but it's limited for all of us. Even if we live to 100 years, it's only a short time. Be wise stewards of how you use your time and bring glory to God and invest in eternity. Thank you for coming this morning, and trust that you will have a blessed week, fun in the snow. But remember, with the temperatures we have, they say frostbite can set in 30 minutes. So be safe.